If a person works on order, let's say a craftsman produces something on orders or under coercion, we may admire what he does, but we despise what he is because he's a machine, and we want people to be human. And you find exactly the same thing in Adam Smith, incidentally. One of the reasons Adam Smith was very critical of division of labor. I mean, he has an ode to division of labor at the beginning of Wealth of Nations, but if you go on, he criticizes it at the end. And he criticizes it because he says if we let division of labor continue, we will reduce people to creatures as stupid and as ignorant as it's possible for a creature to be, because they'll simply be carrying out mechanical operations under command in a very limited domain. And what you are, you know, your intelligence, your understanding, your human characteristics come from your capacity, from the options available to you to carry out independent, productive, creative activities, work included, maybe in free association with others because we're social beings, but not under external coercion. And he said any civilized society is going to have to prevent this from happening. In the 18th century, in the Enlightenment and the period of early modern libertarian revolutions, people like, for example, Wilhelm von Humboldt and Rousseau thought about exactly these questions. They both understood in some sense. It was hard to formulate it clearly and coherently at the time, but they both grasped the idea that languages are basically infinite, that they're expressions of human creativity. In fact, that's a leading Cartesian idea, which came to them right through the rationalist and romantic traditions. And they were also both deeply interested in human liberation. And they did, in fact, try to connect these things pretty much in the way you suggest, by suggesting that at some core level, part of human nature is which is reflected on the cognitive side in things like language, is the capacity to produce and understand and articulate and express new thoughts without limit and without control. So the crucial fact about language use is that it's not determined by our situation. It's coming out of us as freely willed action in some sense, and continually novel and so on. And to express thoughts and ideas that are new to oneself and to other people, but that are intelligible and appropriate and so on. This is a core aspect of human nature. In fact, for the Cartesians, it was the mark of mind. It was the point at which, the specific point at which minds differentiated from machines in their framework. At the core of human nature, again, is a kind of what was later called by Bakunin an instinct for freedom. That is a need to become involved in free creative activity, free creative work. So for, say, Humboldt, one's work is sort of the core of one's existence. You want to be involved in creative, honest work in association with others, but voluntary association and not under external control. These things have mostly been forgotten. As the market systems of the 19th century developed, they eliminated all of this. They would have appalled Adam Smith, no doubt, the market systems that developed, because when you get to people like, say, Malthus and Ricardo and so on, the conception of human beings as freely creative, active people with intrinsic rights due to their nature disappears, and people become nothing more. They have no value other than what they can sell on the market, their labor power. If you can't sell your labor power on the market, you have no right to live. That's the way it was discussed. Because there's nothing to a human being other than what can be attained by sale of labor power within a market system under what become basically totalitarian structures, corporate structures, and so on. So the modern extensions of classical liberalism are very anti-libertarian, and the ideologies change, and the intellectuals change, and so on. So this tradition has pretty much been, well, if not wiped out, at least marginalized. But it's there, and it certainly can be revived. It stayed alive, for example, in the anarchist tradition, and in parts of the libertarian left. In the United States, you find traces of it real traces, as late as people like John Dewey, who probably didn't know any of these things, but just came out of it from another source and reached the same point in his conception of democracy as of value because it opens the opportunities for people to freely liberate themselves, as they must do. It's their sort of core in essence. In the contemporary world, you'd be hard put to find much discussion of this, unfortunately. But I think it should be revived. I think it's very significant.